What is up, guys? Lonehawk here today, and welcome back to another Overwatch map guide. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the map Hollywood. We're going to split this video up into 3 different parts. The first section of the map, which occurs here when the attacking team is trying to capture the payload to move it. The second part being the section where the attacking team is trying to push the payload all the way from this doorway all the way to this building over here. And the last part of this map guide is when the attacking team is trying to push the payload to its final point at the end of the map here. For now, let's go back to the beginning though and talk about what you should be doing at the first point. Here we are in the first point of the map Hollywood. We're going to talk about defense first and then move on to what you should be doing when you're on the attacking team. So, a general tip for the defending team before you move into strategies and positioning is don't be stupid, guys. Utilize this giant choke point that Blizzard has given you. There are only 2 ways the attacking team can get to this point, through this giant arch or this small room over here. If you're trying to defend up here by these cars, or up from here, or in this room over here, you're wasting time and you're going to lose the game. You need to utilize this choke point, and you should never really be pushing past it up to here. The only time the defending team should really push past this choke point is to pick off stragglers after they've won a fight and they know they can get the remaining few. But other than that, you should definitely be back here. So how exactly should you be defending this point? Well, like I said, you really need to focus on this choke point. So I recommend a 3 or a 2-pronged defense setup. This means your team is separated into 3 groups that aren't too far apart, but are far apart enough where they can deal damage to the enemy team from different angles. And these 3 different points are up here on this balcony, down here right in front of the objective, facing both choke points right here, and the third is the second level of the cafe up here. What I like doing is running a 1-3-2 setup. This means you have 1 damage dealer up here, 3 people down here, usually a Reinhardt, another tank like Zarya or Roadhog, and your main support, Lucio or Mercy, and then back here, I like having another DPS like Soldier 76, and my secondary support, which is pretty much always Zenyatta, but Ana works as well. So now let's go into a little bit more detail on this setup, why it works, how it works, and why I've chosen it. I've chosen it because I've watched multiple pro games where this setup was used by both teams, or something very similar was used. That means both teams, when they're on the defending side, use this setup to defend. So let's talk about each of the roles and what they should be doing to help their team. First, we'll start with the person up here, which I like having as a DPS. I've seen some teams put a Roadhog up here or a Zarya up here, but most of them use a DPS, and it works very well. A McCree works very well because he has an escape. This means if he's about to get sniped or hooked by a Roadhog or something bad is about to happen to him, he can roll back to safety back here where enemies shouldn't be able to shoot him, jump down here, and receive cover from his 2 tanks and his support. The damage dealer up here, or whoever you have put up here, has 3 roles. The first role is to watch for flankers. If someone goes around here, if it's a Tracer or a Genji, doesn't matter who it is, if there's a flanker, it is this person's job to alert his team, and if necessary, go try to take out the flanker. If you don't think you can take out the flanker, alert your team, and hopefully the person back in Cafe can watch for them as well. But this person needs to alert the team of watching for this flanker, because if you're right here, sometimes it can be hard to see if a Tracer or a Genji just dashes this way. It can be hard to notice. But if you're up here, you should always see that happening. So that's the first job of this person. The second job is to deal damage to anybody that pokes their head out from behind the enemy Reinhardt's shield. And I say this because you need a Reinhardt on this map. There's no way you're going to get through this choke point if you don't have a Reinhardt and the enemy team does. And then your third role, when none of the first 2 things are happening, is just shooting Reinhardt's shield. You really need to take down that shield, because once it goes down, the whole enemy team is extremely vulnerable, and what they should do usually is back off. That buys you a lot of time, and if they don't back off and your friendly Reinhardt shield is still up, you have a huge advantage in the fight. So that's this person's 3 roles. And remember, you should never be playing this role dangerously. If you don't think this role is working out for your team, you're just getting shot at too much, jump down here and support your team from back here. But be sure to take an angle where you can still watch for those flanks, because that was your job from up there. Down here, you have 2 tanks, a Reinhardt and preferably a Zarya or a Roadhog. That is the setup I recommend. And 1 support, who I recommend being Lucio because Mercy is just garbage right now in the meta. Lucio's AoE healing when he's right here reaches the 2 people he's right next to, your person up here if they're close enough to this ledge, which hopefully they are, and your 2 people in the cafe. So it's very useful. This position right here is the position everybody should be falling back on when things go bad. I didn't want to use the more vulgar term for that. When things go bad, everybody should retreat to their 2 tanks right here. The person up here, if they're getting shot at, jump down here to your tanks. The people back here, if you're getting sniped, or if there's people over here, jump down to your tanks. This role doesn't receive as much danger too often, but the tanks are there if you need to go to them. These people are the main line, the line the enemy team is trying to push through. So stand strong and don't let anybody push through that. Back here, you have someone else that is a damage dealer, like a Soldier 76, and your Zenyatta or your Ana. Zenyatta and Ana are both longer range supports, so they work very well back here. Zenyatta is pretty safe because he can skirt back here, back and forth, and still put his Orbs of Discord and Harmony on enemies and teammates. And his orbs have no damage drop off, so if you can land them on enemy tanks or big targets, you're still going to be doing your maximum damage from all the way back here. And then your Soldier 76 or your other damage dealer is just in a different position from your first damage dealer. That way they both can't be taken out at the same time. Another thing about this balcony is I recommend not stacking too many people on it. I've seen whole teams stack all up here on the balcony. Your Reinhardt, everybody's up here. And while it can work, I don't think it's as good as having more people down here. And that's because if you have everybody up here and the enemy team decides that they notice that and they're just like, all right, we'll just come over here, you're kind of in a bad position. If they're here and you're all back there, they're now the ones defending the point, and since you're all up there, they can defend from one direction. So I wouldn't recommend stacking way too many people up here. Experiment with it, but I think this is a direct downgrade to having most of your people down here. This is the main spot right here. This is where you can watch both choke points and you have cover and you're near the objective. So if everything fails, try to stay around here. So now you're tasked with attacking this point. The way I like to attack this point is very simple. This section is actually going to be shorter than the defense section because, like I said, it's very simple. This point is hard to attack. I'm not going to lie. If the enemy team has a competent setup where they have a main line right here, it's not going to be the easiest thing to take. If they don't have a competent setup, like they have a lot of people over here, too many people up here, and there's just not a wall of tanks right here, it's easy. You just push onto the point, and if your whole team is here, their defense falls apart because the people over here are useless. The people up here they have to jump down and expose themselves to get on the point. If the enemy team doesn't have a good setup, rush to this point. But if they have a good setup, you're going to need to do something to get through it. And that something is brute force it. And I mean, you have to really push. You can have a flanker. One flanker is definitely good on this map. I like having a flanker come back here and poke at the enemy team. Don't overcommit as a flanker. If you keep dying as a flanker, you're not doing your job. A flanker should be poking the enemy team and distracting them so they're focused on you and not your pushers. Just don't overcommit back there. But your pushers, you should have one DPS hero, 2 tanks, and 2 supports. And the other person should obviously be, like I said, a flanker. That can be Tracer, Genji, your favorite assault hero. It doesn't really matter. The pushers, though, need to get through. The first job is to take out anybody not behind a Reinhardt shield. So if they're running my setup, the person up here will be that style of person. But you're probably not going to be able to kill them because, like I said, they should have an escape. So the person up here, you should focus on getting rid of them up here. You should make them fall back down onto the point. And anybody back here probably isn't directly behind Reinhardt's shield, so you can also probably force them into cover by shooting them a few times as well. Once those people are out of the way and everybody's behind a Reinhardt shield or cover, your whole team needs to focus the Reinhardt shield. Everybody needs to focus the enemy Reinhardt shield. You just need to disrupt the enemy team enough to where their fire isn't concentrated, and then your whole team's concentrated fire can take out the enemy Reinhardt shield, and you can push onto the point. That's all there is to it. You need to brute force it on this point. You need to speed boost in as Lucio. It's really trying to go about it, technically and go slow. It's going to get you killed because the enemy team is spread out and they're going to cut you by surprise. So brute forcing it through this point is my recommended go. So let's move on to the second point. You're the defending team and you lost the first point, and now you have to defend the payload and try to stop it from reaching this building. This section of the map and the next section are really where defensive setups fall apart. I've seen it so often. People just do not know how to defend with the payload in this section. The only time I've ever really seen payloads defended very well in this section is when the defensive team holds them at this choke point right here. But that's not always possible, because once the payload is like here, this choke point really isn't an option to defend anymore unless you get a team wipe. So how do you defend this setup? Well, there are two ways, and I like one a lot more than the other. Let's talk about my less favorite one first. I've seen pro teams do it as the only reason I'm mentioning it. I've seen pro teams set up a setup like this where they have 2 damage dealers or 1 damage dealer up here with a tank and their secondary support, and then the rest of their team down here. They have another 2-pronged setup. So half the team's up here and half the team's down here. The team up here's job is to watch for flanks and provide support to this group right here. It works kind of well, and it can be effective, but the reason I don't like using it is if you guys die and this doesn't work, the enemy team is going to push past my second choke point that I like using, which is this roof right here. This roof is so extremely effective at defending the payload. You don't even realize it. I promise you, it's very effective. Having a Reinhardt right here with his shield means the rest of your team, you could basically have your whole team up here shooting down at this area right here where the payload needs to come. And the best part is you literally do not need to worry about this section over here. If enemies flank this way, oh, we're right here. What can we shoot at? Nothing. They can't see you because this tall part of the wall here and this other shorter part protects your team when they're down here and right here. You also don't need too many people watching for flankers because depending on who the enemy team has as a flanker, they can't even shoot you up here. Like if they have a tracer, what is tracer going to do? Come all the way around here, take the lift, and go all the way up? No, it's not going to work. You're going to notice her before that. Have like one person, maybe even your Lucio watching for supports because he can heal while watching for people over here. And if the person that's a flanker becomes a threat, Lucio can just tell his team. Otherwise, your whole team can just focus fire down here, and it's disgusting. So I highly recommend defending on the saloon here. It works very well. So you're the attacking team and you now want to know how to push the payload from here all the way over to here. Well, lucky for you, it's not too hard. Most teams won't defend on the saloon and they'll be pretty messed up and unorganized after you take the first point because most teams don't plan ahead. So they're now trying to think on the spot like, where do we defend? How do we set up here? Do we set up here? And they're usually pretty thrown off. So a solid group effort by your team, if you're all together and on the payload, should actually usually get you to the point. But not always. So let's talk about some situations you might encounter and how you should be dealing with them. So let's say you barely took this point. Most of your team is dead. Only one person survived and took the point. So now you need to wait. Your whole team needs to respawn. They need to get to the payload. And it gives the enemy team time to set up. There are 2 situations that can occur. Or actually, there are a lot of situations. Just let's talk about 2. The first situation I encounter a lot is when the defending team decides they want to use this as a choke point to the second section of the map. They're going to try to stop you from even moving the payload at all. They're going to sit right here and utilize this line of sight because they know nobody can get through them without going right through their vision, either through this doorway, or wherever. They are on lockdown right here. This shouldn't be too hard for you to defend. I mean, a good flanker is all it takes to get through this. I mean, seriously, use a Genji or a Tracer or anybody who's competent with flanking, and you can destroy this setup because they're all focused so hard right here. They're not going to be able to stop a very fast flanker that's moving through here. But if that's not working as well, you can also utilize Devo with your flanker. So you have a squishier flanker like Genji or Tracer along with a Diva. You're going to completely wreck this setup because their team's going to turn around. They won't know how to handle you, and your team will be able to collapse on them and kill them. Another thing you should be aware of is the fact that your spawn is like way closer than their spawn. Look, they are right here. Their spawn's way back there. Your spawn is right here. So if your team goes even with them for kills, that's a good thing. You can get back to the fight much faster, and sometimes you can even stagger their deaths. By that I mean you kill 3 of them and they kill 3 of you. Your guys get back faster, so you have 6 people here. They only have 3 people defending. You kill those 3 people, and their other 3 are, just about to get back to the fight, and they're going to try to defend as well. And then you kill those 3 people, and their deaths are staggered now, and you can push usually through the whole thing if they don't realize it. And sometimes by the time they realize it, it's way too late. They're like, all right, we need to group up, and they're grouped up here, which is actually the second situation. Somehow, I feel like every defending team on this map all of a sudden comes together and really just tries their hardest when the payload is about to reach right here. And for the life of me, I can't understand why. There isn't much to defend from here, but it does occur, so let's talk about it. Sometimes you're attacking and you just cannot get the payload these last 5 meters because the whole defending team is here. Honestly, I think it's this spot right here. This little bit of cover right here, combined with the cover of being able to fall back in here and even walk into this building, is it's not hard to push through, but it can be tricky to realize what you should be doing. So what you should be doing is sticking with your team. I see so many people like, all right, there's a bastion over there. Let's flank the bastion over here. No. Don't worry about all that. They're the ones trying to stop you. Get on that payload and push through it. Get a Reinhardt on top of it if you need to and push through. Another great thing that helps push through this area is just get a Genji up here or any flanker. A Pharaoh works extremely well up here. Just shoot down, disrupt them. You don't have to get kills, you just need to damage them and make them focus you, because once they're focused up here, they're not focused on most of your team, which is pushing over here. That eye movement that's truly terrifying. Like what Blizzard? What are you? I mean, the last area on the map. We're gonna learn how to defend this area. Yep, that's what we're here for. So, well, let's talk about it. This area is kind of a mess. Actually, it's not kind of a mess. It is really a mess. Defending teams, honestly, I've never seen one know how to defend this area. And to be honest, I hadn't really looked into it too much until I decided to make this video. I've looked at some pro games, I've looked at some replays, and did some experimentation in game and decided a few things. For one, you really don't want your team to be in this area defending. Like maybe in here and up here, this isn't a very good setup. And let me explain why before I get some negativity. This can work. Any setup can work. I get a lot of comments on videos saying, you're wrong because I've made this work before. Well, you can make anything work depending on the team you're facing. I'm just trying to give you the best ideas and the best things you can be doing. And this isn't the best. Setting up here and here is a bad idea because if you're far enough to the left over here to see this doorway, because look, you can't see it over here, you're so vulnerable. 3 doorways enemies can shoot at you from, and you have no idea which they're going to come through. You have no vision of that, so you are seriously vulnerable here. And the same goes for down here. The enemy can collapse on you and attack you from 3 different angles. And this conveniently placed rock, which, Blizzard definitely intentionally placed there, inhibits your vision of that doorway. And when you're up here, you also have not much vision of that doorway. So you really don't want to set up too far up here. There are 2 areas I recommend defending from on this portion of the map, and neither of them are ideal. You guys will find flaws in them, but these are what the pros use. These are what high-ranked players use. So they are the best setup. This area isn't very good for defending, so this is the best thing we've got. And it's right here. You really want to have a Reinhardt and a main tank right next to him, defending this area, trying to stop the enemies from pushing the payload in. Now, this is the best defense setup, but it does have its flaws, like I said, so let's cover those. The first is, you may not see someone coming up behind over here. So to prevent this, you need to make sure you have eyes on the enemy team and realize when one of them is missing. If a Genji goes missing, you need to be afraid because he might have his Dragon Blade and he can mess you up by coming around this corner. So make sure your eyes are on the enemy team. Make sure someone is frequently watching this area. Make sure you realize where the enemies are and their crucial players are and recognize when they go missing. That way you can identify it when they come through this area. Another weakness is, well, the enemy team, if you're all back there, they can push through here, all the way into here, and into this room. Now, this is only a problem if you let it become a problem. It can and probably will be used to flank by enemy tracers and Genjis and any other flanker in the game, but if more than one person goes through there, if most of their team goes through there, you realize they're putting themselves into a choke point. It shouldn't be hard to focus fire on them and take them all out. So don't really worry about this room. Plus, you're pushed right. If you push up far enough, like right here, you'll be able to see that area. And if you're pushed up back enough right here, because this whole area is where you should be defending from. This little L-shaped strip right here, this area won't be too big of a problem. So that's what I have to say about this area. Let's move on to the next one, which is back here, and there's not much to say about it. It's a choke point for sure, but look at, there are 4 doors the enemies can push through, and one of them is completely separated from the rest, so flankers can come through here and kind of ruin your day. The best method, I think, to defending this point is utilize this doorway right here. Group your team up in this area and around this corner and put lots of hurt in the enemy team when you can. If your team is closer range than the enemy team, wait for them to push closer. If your team has more range than the enemy team, start shooting at them when they're way back here. Utilize this doorway because that's where the payload's coming through. That's where most of the team will be coming through. And just make sure you have guys on the sides watching for these flanks. There's no crazy tricks, like I said. You really just need to focus, you need to group, and you need to play your best. We are almost done, guys, I swear. The last thing we have to talk about is attacking on this section of the map. And if you noticed when I was talking about defense, I said you have to defend this L-shaped area and back here. So basically, we have one big L-shaped area that the defending team is trying to stop the attacking team on. So all it really comes down to is whichever team pushes harder. There aren't any gimmicks for the defending team to utilize. It's just pushing. Whoever can push harder. Both teams are kind of on an even playing ground almost. So how do we actually win that? What can I do to help you with that? Well, for one, I told you when you were on defense, you should be utilizing this corner here and this door here. When you're on the attacking team, be aware of those two things and try to push harder than the enemy team. How do we push harder? Well, utilize a few heroes in particular. McCree and Soldier 76 are both amazing at pushing and amazing at taking out Reinhardt's shields. McCree also offers some high burst damage. One headshot deals 140 damage. So if anybody peeks their way out of a Reinhardt shield or Reinhardt drops his shield, he can put up some high damage very quickly. So using those heroes is going to help you. Also, having a flanker can help you a lot if you don't have those pushing heroes on your team. A flanker can come up here and poke the enemy team and distract them. Once again, like that first point, don't overcommit as a flanker. Just try to get the enemy team to turn at you. If you get 2 people to turn at you, you've done your job properly. Because if one person distracts 2 people, you've just tipped the scales for your team over here. So make sure you're using your Reinhardt, you're using a Zarya, you make sure you have your 2 tanks, you need 2 tanks to push. If you don't have a flanker, use 2 high damage pushers like McCree and Soldier 76. You'll hear me mention those names a lot because they're very good. But that's my tips for attacking this point. Just try to push harder than the enemy team, whatever that takes. And that really concludes our Hollywood map guide. I'm sorry if that last section on attacking wasn't very helpful. There's not much to say about it in my opinion. If you do have something to say, be sure to put it in the comments. I'll make sure I reply to it and let other people know about it. I can update my description section and utilize the comments to, help other players, give your opinions and tips for this map. Give me what you think I was right on, what I was wrong on, and really just use this as an opportunity to help improve yourself and other players in the community. Hopefully you all enjoyed, and I will see you all later. Lone Hawk, out.